This is Hemant.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. Please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast if you like what you're listening to. And before we start with anything, I want to give a few shout outs to some of our recent supporters. I want to thank Hillary C., Barbara F., Howard, Connor N., Kyle S., Nancy K., Mighty Red, and Dean B. Thank you for supporting us via Patreon. I also want to give a shout out to one of our longtime listeners, Ryan Miranda, who just had a baby. Ryan, I hope you have a comfortable rocking chair and enough reading material to get you through the next few months. Congratulations to you.
Congratulations.
And, there's so much that happened. I was looking at the stuff we talked about last week, and I feel like almost all of it is irrelevant now.
Now that Olympus has fallen or whatever.
Yeah, pretty much. I do want to talk about that in the context of a few specific stories, but I don't know if you have any quick takes on it before we get into it.
Yeah. Okay, yes, I do actually have some quick takes. So my first one is, I feel like I'll ask you, Hemant, what was when it started happening, I
thought it was going to be a dumb MAGA rally, the likes of which we have seen many, many times before, where you have a bunch of his supporters, they want to go, they want to be around people, they want to not wear masks and just hang out with each other and complain about how complain about how persecuted they are. And then they would yell out their grievances and then, I don't know, go back into the sewer, whatever it is they do. And that's kind of it. And honestly, I'm pretty sure that's what Trump thought it was too. I mean, I've seen video of him and his family watching the live proceedings of the rally before he spoke or before he did anything. And he's just watching in amusement because it's his people fawning over him.
Right.
And that's pretty much all these rallies have ever been. So they'll incite them, they'll tell them to do things, they'll use code words make sure you're exercising those Second Amendment rights. And then they I don't know if they said that this time, but that's what they do at their rallies. And then they all just leave and do whatever it is they do, go back to their regular jobs where they think there are no consequences for anything. And this time around, I don't know. I'm literally saying I don't know how much of this was, let's storm the Capitol for real. I don't know how much of that was planned by the Trump people versus, we should take over the government. Yeah, it's our government, not their government. And somehow that got into, all right, fine, if that's what you want, we'll totally. Some of these people obviously were prepared to do it. You could see pictures. They had hostage ties and stuff and guns.
Fucking zip ties.
Yes. It seemed like most of them who were inside the building, who made it inside the building, had no friggin' idea what was going on. They're just in there there are rope lines in the sanctuary hall. I guess we'll just walk in perfect single file alignment.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do. I've read stories where they don't know where to go. They're looking for Schumer or Pelosi, but you know where their offices are? They're too incompetent. They have very big ideals, but they don't know what they're doing, which, hey, welcome to the past 4 years. I know we've said this before, and we are not the first to say this. Trump is awful. Everything he's done is horrible. Can you imagine if he had any sense of what the hell is going on and knew how to do anything? This is why Ted Cruz or Josh Hawley is scarier than Trump is, because they're everything he is, but they're not dumb enough to fall for the stuff he falls for. They know how to speak correctly and get people to do all this crazy stuff. Trump is just I just want to go on Twitter and poop or whatever. It would be way scarier if smarter extremists got into power. So Trump is bad. The next Trumpist who comes in would be way worse. And so I feel the same way about his fans who are storming the building. I'm glad they're too stupid to know how to pull this off, because it could have been really bad if they actually came in with a plan. And it seemed like they were as surprised as anyone that they broke through the barriers and the police weren't stopping them. And they're like, oh, we can get, all right, we're inside. I don't know what to do now. Let's just steal some shit and take pictures. Mm-hmm. And granted, it got worse. Some people, obviously, like several people have died. 5 people, I think, as of now. There were obviously a couple thefts that I've heard of, like a laptop from some offices. Like some people knew what they were doing when they went in there. But imagine if actual like foreign enemies like got in with them, what they could have done. Imagine if all those people came in with like Ocean's 11 type heist where they all know exactly what they're doing. Like it's to our benefit, I guess, that the new Confederacy is full of the dumbest people in the country, that they stormed the Capitol and then didn't plan ahead.
Right. So my deal was, it was weird kind of watching it happen in slow motion. I knew that the Trump rally was happening and then, they're heading toward the Capitol. Oh my God, they're on the other side of the gates and they're, you kind of hear it happening in slow motion on social media. And the people I was talking with when it was happening, I kept hearing like, can you believe this? I can't believe this. Can you believe they got in the Capitol? And honestly, I was surprised. I wasn't that surprised though, because this feels like this is what everything was ramping up toward. This feels like the logical conclusion to all of this, all the saber rattling that he's been doing since the election. It shouldn't surprise any of us that they were whipped up into a frenzy to the point where they stormed their own Capitol building. That building hasn't been quote unquote taken since I think the War of 1812. Like it is truly unprecedented. In my reflection this morning, when I was kind of skimming through thought pieces and reactions, was I am very glad that both the media and many, if not most politicians, are taking this extremely seriously. My biggest fear was this all happened, nobody really got hurt, and then everybody just kind of moved on with their life and pretended it didn't happen, because that feels like the pattern, excuse me, we've been seeing over and over again with the Trump presidency, that he does something appalling or horrible or racist and sexist, homophobic, and then the next day it's like, well, there's something else to worry about.
Right.
So I am relieved in a way that we did see a lot of people resign from his cabinet, including Betsy DeVos, which I don't know how to feel about that. I mean, that said,
now I think trying to save herself, but also that absolves her of trying to impeach him by claiming like
the 25th.
Like, yeah. So she leaves. Mitch McConnell's wife leaves her cabinet position, but really that helps them more than it hurts anybody else because they've already done the damage.
Right. Exactly.
They don't have to say, oh, I'm not part of the cabinet, I can't vote to impeach him. Bye.
Right. And I understand that. But I think there is something reassuring with the fact that people are taking this as seriously as it deserves to be taken and aren't brushing it under the rug as like, oh, a couple wingnuts who, went too far. They know that people flew in for this. They knew people were planning this. They had fucking t-shirts printed up, man. Like this was not a spur of the moment thing.
It'll be interesting to see how many of these politicians, Hawley, some of the House members, like who incited this stuff and called for it, and will do the thing of like, well, I didn't ask for violence when I said bring your guns,
right?
Sort of thing. What consequences will they face? Because I've heard Josh Hawley's biggest donor, who's given millions of dollars to his campaigns, is like, well, that was a mistake. And his mentor was like, yep, but he was a bad idea. But again, he's not on the ballot. And what's going to happen 2 to 4 years from now? Like anything, like it doesn't really matter unless even now, like I've heard people complain like, oh, the House is going to impeach Trump next week, whatever. It's a couple days left of his presidency, but that could actually, there are reasons Republicans may go along with it, not because they care about the impeachment, but because the one thing you would accomplish is it would block Trump from running for president again. Right. And that's to like Ted Cruz's benefit.
Sure.
And so maybe he will be impeached. I don't know. But it's about taking action and preventing this stuff. Enough, at least the Capitol Police people got fired or resigned. At least the FBI is like, no, we're looking into all this. We have your pictures. It looks like a lot of the people who were like, I don't need a mask. I'm showing my face at this rally because I can get away with it.
Dude, there was a guy who wore his ID badge from his work around his neck on a lanyard. That's how fucking cocky these people are.
Oh, I mean, if you're live streaming your heist,
right.
Like, don't be surprised when people are like, I know him. His name is this. He works here. And then I think there was one guy from Illinois who was on the news, and he's like, I mean, that was a mistake. Dude, it happened yesterday.
Yeah.
You're not a new person all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So good. I hope you suffer the consequences for participating. I actually did want to talk about that for a second, because one of the participants, not one of the guys who was in the Capitol, as far as I know, but he was all the way up to it pretty much, is a guy named Rick Saccone, who is a former Pennsylvania state representative. And he posted a video online, which he later deleted, not knowing that people can save videos on the internet. He said in his selfie video, like, yeah, we're trying to run out all the evil people in there and all the rhinos that have betrayed our president. We're going to run them out of their offices, and we're calling on Vice President Pence to support our president. Until next time, in God we trust. This guy posted this video, and if you're not familiar with his name, let me give you a quick rundown of who this guy is. He was in the Pennsylvania state legislature for, from 2011 to 2018, 7-year span right there. Among the things he tried to do, he sponsored a resolution declaring it the year of the Bible. He sponsored National Fast Day because of our dependence on the overruling power of God. He sponsored the National Motto Display Act to put in God We Trust in every school in the state. He said anyone who opposed his bill wasn't a patriot. And he also once told a church audience, our nation needs to return to God through prayer, because that's the only way to stop our country from descending into a culture of chaos and destructive behavior. That guy, who then ran for Congress and lost to Connor Lamb, he's the guy who was at this rally, but he loves to sow the seeds. And here's how here's how everything gets reaped.
Yeah.
After he posted that video, turns out for the past 2 decades, he's been teaching history at a place called St. Vincent College. And as soon as word got out that this guy's bragging about being at the rally, St. Vincent College must have said to him, yeah, we're gonna fire you. And he's like, no, I quit. So he resigned. And the school posted a statement that said, we commenced an investigation of the facts and circumstances surrounding his video. As a result of that investigation, Dr. Saccone has submitted, and we have accepted his letter of resignation. And a reporter asked him, it seems you're exhorting people to do violence. And Saccone responds, well, it could seem like that to someone who doesn't know me. No one who listens to that would think when you say, save the nation, drain the swamp, or throw out the rhinos, that you're actually going to do any physical violence. Those are figures of speech.
Hey, Hammond, I feel like I keep hearing people talk about rhinos, and I don't know what that means, and I don't care to look it up.
Republican in name only. So you're a Republican, but you're not really defending Trumpism. So okay, moderate Republicans, you just call yourself that. But Mitt Romney, he's the biggest rhino of them all. That's what they're getting at. So
doesn't rhino have an H in it?
They can't spell, these people. So Saccone resigned from his teaching gig, which is good because they shouldn't have Confederates teaching history.
I think that's a good rule of thumb. Yes,
but good. And he's not sitting. He's a former Republican lawmaker. I think I counted there were 6 actual sitting Republican lawmakers who were seen at the protest.
Oh, totally. Oh my God. Wait, oh Jesus.
I did not get any alerts from Antifa telling me to go there, by the way.
I know. I'm so bummed. I must have when you accidentally unsubscribe from something and you're like, I just want to unsubscribe from like the promotional stuff. But if something's happening, you should, it's just hard, with email servers. This is now one of my favorite things to sort of watch the fallout of, in terms of like this happened. We saw this happen after pew pew pew. What was the one of the tiki torches?
Which one? Charlottesville. After Charlottesville, we saw just person after person who like their face was just out in the open, and people called them out on it, and were like, "Hey, you're fired," or whatever, because you're a Nazi monster. That's happening again, and there's this story of a guy. Besides the guy who wore his fucking, like, this is how cocky these assholes are. He wore his lanyard with his name and his own dumb face on it. This is how you know it's not a planned heist. Like, right. When you do the heist, you'll wear the masks. I forgot who said this. Like, these guys are such COVID denialists. They wouldn't even wear a mask, and it's going to end up biting them in the ass because it's so easy to identify who they are.
So there was a guy who died. So there's been 5 deaths, is my understanding, related.
4 officers and one of the rioters.
Oh, I don't know if that's right. Well, because there's the one woman who everybody heard of. She got
she was one of the rioters. Mm-hmm.
But I think there's another guy who died in the he died of a heart attack. So he didn't die of like getting shot or whatever.
He was also a rioter.
But he technically is.
You're right. He's not one of the.
So yes. I'm trying to find his name, but apparently he was. God, I hate to speak ill of the dead, but apparently this guy tased himself to death while trying to steal a painting from the Capitol building.
I mean,
and I have some sources that say he did tase himself in the balls and that triggered a heart attack. I don't know if that's true, but I just need it to be true so badly.
What's the Bill Maher thing? I don't know if it's true, but it is true. I'm not saying it. He has some segment he does on his show like that.
Anyway, and then that guy posted. But the thing is, like, you
did you see the whitewashing of guys like that? That guy included, where they're like, he's a loving grandfather, dude. He's a guy who stormed the Capitol. He's not a good guy. I don't care that he took a nice picture on Christmas with your grandkids.
But then you look at pictures from like their timeline leading up to it, and this one guy who for some reason I cannot find his name right now. This one guy who died like immediately before he has a picture of himself with like 2 rifles in his living room posing like he's like posing for a Revolutionary War painting. It's just like these people are violent. They were seeking out violence, and that's anyway. Wait, while we're still talking about politicians being stupid, have you heard about our own Representative Mary Miller from Illinois?
She's not she was, I guess, born and raised or something in Naperville, where we're from. Yeah, she represents south, like eastern part of Illinois, like basically the part of Chicago. Like if you go south of Chicago, there's I-80 that cuts the state not in half, a little above half, but she represents like lower than that, which is Republican areas. So she is the new representative for that big swath of the state, but a very Republican part of the state, very comfortably Republican.
And tellingly, if you look at the map, it's basically all of Southern Illinois, except for the areas immediately around Champaign, Illinois, which is where the University of Illinois is, and St. Louis, which is a city, and therefore, anyway, so she
Mary
Miller, yep. Honestly, her being from Naperville and now representing Southern Illinois is maybe the least surprising thing I've heard all week. So she was making a little speech for Moms for America. And she said this. So she's talking about whatever. Basically, her thesis is we need to get more young people into conservative politics, which I would say the best way to do that is make your politics better. But that's not for me to say. But she said, This is the battle, referring to young people. Hitler, this is a direct quote, Hitler was right on one thing. He said, whoever has the youth has the future.
That was a prepared speech. She wrote that down, not off the cuff.
Like 3x5 cards.
Mm-hmm.
And then she like doubled down on it.
Yeah. The weird thing is, that's not like a Hitler original. She could have quoted any number of people who have said versions of the same thing.
There must be like a Dr. Seuss quote that got that job done easier, right? Like,
had to go with Hitler. And she said today, this is Friday, she said this morning, released a statement saying, I'm paraphrasing, she said, I just quoted him like, you guys, I'm pro-Israel. I have spoken to Jews. I know the Jews. I'm friends with Jews. I'm paraphrasing. But like,
no, you got it.
Yeah, that was basically the gist of it. Trying to pretend like quoting Hitler in a positive light is just a normal. Why are you guys making a big deal of this?
But
that's her attitude.
I really think that's my favorite part of this whole thing is what you said immediately. Like Hitler's not the only person to say like, hey, the youth are the future. There's literally a song that says, I believe the children are the future. Like, you had options, Mary. What are you doing?
Yeah, she has not resigned yet. And the thing is, calling for her resignation, which the Illinois GOP could force her hand or put pressure on her or whatever, they could withhold funding for her next campaign, whatever it is. It's a Republican district.
Yeah.
You are not getting rid of a Republican. You could get a new one in there. It wouldn't be difficult. But you can get rid of the Hitler one. And by the way, she's not even the first person to talk about Hitler in some positive light. Because we talked about Madison Cawthorn, who's a new Congress member, who also is like, Hitler's summer home, call that a vacation, boom. Which I know, tourist attraction, but he's like, I am at the Führer's home.
Oh, I forgot about
you can use, and again, she too is like, I didn't say Hitler was awesome. I just quoted him. Yeah, but you chose to say like, yeah, I'm here. Let me use his honorific. Let me say he got this thing right. He was also a wonderful orator. Like,
he loved dogs.
You don't. Yeah, he was a vegetarian. You don't need to cite him as the guy who did all these things that you happen to overlap with.
And I didn't realize until literally reading this article on USA Today about this story, I didn't know J.B. Pritzker, who's the Illinois governor, is Jewish. So that layers a real fun, extra anti-Semitic layer on there.
He's gotten a lot of anti-Semitic stuff from Republicans in the state when he was campaigning.
I genuinely didn't know that, and I'm kind of embarrassed about that. / proud. I don't know. Unclear. Anyway,
let me talk about this. Okay, there have been a lot of religious.
Sorry. Sorry. Before we move on, I was talking about people getting like busted in for marching. One thing I do want to call out because it hits a little close to home. Insight Studios is a tattoo parlor in the Illinois suburbs. My friend who goes there is from Joliet. I'm not sure if they're right around there or further north or west. Anyway, the owner of Insight Studios Tattoo Parlor was he was part of the riot. And my friend just found out, and she's been getting tattooed from this guy since she was 18, I think. So she's pretty devastated. No, they're in Chicago, 1062 North Milwaukee Avenue. So anyway, if you are looking to get tattoos in the Chicagoland area, I would go ahead and pass a hard pass on Insight Studios. Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
I enjoyed a picture that showed someone left Axe body spray on the Capitol grounds.
No.
And Axe responded to a tweet saying, like, we condemn the riots. It's like Axe body spray has more like guts, to say the obvious, than like most of the Republican Party.
Somebody also...
They're more blunt about their condemnation of Trump.
First of all, I love following business Twitter when they start releasing statements that are like more democratic than anybody else. But also, did you see somebody...
Yeah, we condemn the coup on the Capitol. Thanks, Olive Garden.
But that's like when COVID first happened, and I kept getting all these alerts from like either Squadcast or something else that's like necessarily a virtual thing. They're like, these are our protocols for Squadcast. I'm like, actually, I don't think I can catch COVID this way. And then still my gym was still like, I think we're fine. Anyway. Somebody apparently smeared shit around the Capitol. Mm-hmm. And this did lead to a conversation.
Very on brand with these people.
Oh, yeah. It really did make me wonder, like, I thought about this too much. Like, was this somebody who brought in a bag of shit to, like, smear it in the Capitol? Or do you think he, like, had too much coffee before he went in?
Oh, I think it was a fresh move.
These people are idiot. Like, the thing is, they're monsters and they're dangerous and they're racist and they're anti-Semitic, but they're also not hygienic. Yeah. Okay.
A lot of religious right figures, Christian news outlets, obviously they put out statements, editorials or op-ed pieces basically saying that was horrible, that should never happen. Okay, fine. Like, thanks for doing the bare minimum. Let me give a special shout out to the National Catholic Reporter, a news outlet, Catholic news outlet, because not only did they condemn the coup, they basically said Catholics need to confess their complicity in the failed coup. And I want to read you a bit of what they wrote, because holy shit, I've never seen anything like this. Like, this is what I want to see from a lot of these news outlets. We're talking to you, CatholicVote.org, Attorney General William Barr, and other Catholics in the Trump administration, Amy Coney Barrett, Cardinal Timothy Dolan, Bill Donahue of the Catholic League, rogue pro-lifer Abby Johnson. Sadly, the list goes on. And what about the everyday Catholics, some 50% of them who voted for Trump this year after 4 years of incompetence, racist dog whistles, and attacks on democratic norms? Too many Catholic voters were content to cozy up to Trump in exchange for tax breaks or Supreme Court judges or subsidies for Catholic schools. Wait, it's not done. Many of these folks have been shaped by right-wing Catholic media, whether rogue priests on Twitter, websites such as Church Militant or LifeSite News, which I believe is Laura Ingraham's site, or the Catholic media conglomerate, the Eternal Word Television Network, EWTN. The latter, with its veneer of respectability, has misinformed millions of Catholics worldwide with its biased news and opinion shows. EWTN anchor Raymond Arroyo, who moonlights on Laura Ingraham's show, The Ingraham Angle on Fox News, where he is freed from EWTN's alleged respectability, deserves singling out. Wow. I have not seen that was the National Catholic Reporter. I have not seen like Christianity Today put out a call against the evangelical pastors who have shilled for Trump for all these years. And again, just to point out what they did, they didn't just name names of prominent Trump supporting Catholics. They called out the Catholics in the pews, which is the half of them who are Republican voters. Like, no, you're part of the problem too. Granted, again, NCR is National Catholic Reporter is not the Vatican.
Sure.
But it's a
the call is coming from inside the house, right?
It's not a one-person website here. We're talking about people that put out news regularly. Like, that was impressive. Good for you. That was awesome.
As we transition to the next story, I want to say also Balboa's in Naperville and Tank Noodle, which is I think in Chicago in like the Argyle neighborhood. Those are both the owners of both of those were also attendees of the Trump rally.
We're in the suburbs of Chicago. I assume everyone's like.
Well, I mean, Tank Noodle is like, you know, that Argyle neighborhood. It's.
No, I've never left my house in my life.
Okay, so. There's the Argyle Red Line stop, and it's a huge Vietnamese neighborhood.
Okay.
It's just, there's a million places to go in there, and they're all fucking amazing. But Tank Noodle is actually a really popular one. It's right by the Argyle stop, and apparently the owner of that has attended the thing. So just
interesting.
Heads up on that. I will keep them coming.
It's one of those things like the anti-gay wedding photographer. Like, if you are open about your feelings about gay people or Trump or whatever, like you can have your business, but I think we can totally publicize the fact that you're horrible people. And if people have a choice of where to get their food or who to hire for a big event, like people should know what you stand for or what you're willing to do or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to move away from the coup for a second. Because there's a couple news stories I want to talk about that happened earlier this week that got drowned out by everything else. And this one is even before the Georgia runoff, which I also want to talk about.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. Jesus.
I know. That was a year ago and also like 2 days ago. The Pew Research Center put out their list of the religious makeup of the new Congress. They do this every 2 years. And one thing is that there wasn't that much of a change, despite names changing, because people retired, people lost, new people are in there. There wasn't too much of religious change on the list, but a couple highlights here. For the first time ever, there is an open humanist on the list. That's Representative Jared Huffman. He is not listed as a humanist on their list. He's listed literally as other. He is the only other in Congress. Kyrsten Sinema, the senator from Arizona, who's one of the more conservative Democrats, is listed as the only unaffiliated member of Congress. Mm-hmm. And once again, same as 2 years ago, there are 18 members of Congress who chose not to answer the religion question. Mm-hmm. A lot of new names on that list, including one Republican, Representative Chris Jacobs, who just won a special election over the summer. I can't tell if this is because he has some philosophical objection to talking about his faith or lack of it, or because he just didn't fill out the survey.
I was going to say, is there like a false positive?
Yeah, we don't know. One thing that's worth pointing out is Kyrsten Sinema is the only unaffiliated member of Congress. But let's say you lump her in with Jared Huffman, who's openly non-religious. You have two people. They represent 0.4% of Congress. And yet non-religious Americans represent like 29% of the population. To contrast that, 65% of the U.S. population, 65% is Christian, of some matter of speaking, and yet 88.1% of Congress is Christian in some form.
Yeah, that's weird. It's almost like they're overrepresented and therefore think they're more important than they are. I don't know. I don't know.
There are, just FYI, who are the people who refuse to answer the question? 3 Democratic senators, Michael Bennet, Tammy Duckworth from Illinois, Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin. There are more Tammys who won't answer the question about religion than there are like openly non-religious people in Congress. There are also the new people on the list. Jamal Bowman, one of the more progressive guys who won in New York for Congress this time around, did not answer the religion question.
Interesting.
That was interesting. The person who took over Tulsi Gabbard's seat in Hawaii, I don't know how you say his name, Kai Kahele, he is one of the people who did not answer the question. So those are 2 new names on the list.
I don't think I knew Tulsi Gabbard wasn't running for her seat again.
Yeah, she went off the train. In her last acts in office, while over the past week, she filed bills that would block trans people from participating in sports and filed anti-abortion legislation. So,
why were people telling me that she was a viable human being I should listen to? I don't remember why.
Because she was brown and seemed progressive, but SNL portrays her as an evil Cruella de Vil type witch, which seems right on track with haha, I infiltrated your people. Now I will take over.
Yeah, you know what?
Not progressive.
Yeah, also I feel like she's more hawkish than I will. She's a military background, I think. So I feel like she has a lot of strong thoughts on intervention in the Middle East or whatever. Anyway, I don't know.
Let me, before we move on, let me give a shout out to our sponsor for the show, because I appreciate their sponsorship. This is from the book Elle the Humanist. And here, if you're not familiar with the story, here's what it's about. Elle had a small problem growing up in a secular household, but in an area that's predominantly religious. She was really this is a true story. She's one of the only kids in her 3rd grade class who wasn't religious. So when she talked to her friends, they had a hard time understanding someone they knew did not go to church, did not pray. They wondered how she knew right from wrong if she didn't have a pastor or a church leader, temple leader, whoever it was. If she didn't have a holy book to tell her right from wrong, how could she do it? And she found out that, they weren't trying to convert her. They weren't judgmental. They just didn't understand it. And so Elle would end up talking to her dad about their beliefs and how she was being raised without religion. And she hoped from those conversations to learn how she could talk to her friends. And she ended up writing a book with her dad, and it's called Elle the Humanist. It's a child's book, but it's an introduction to humanism for young readers. Really easy to read, really beautiful pictures in there as well. You can order that book at ellethehumanist.com. That's ELLE, ellethehumanist.com. And if you use the link that we're putting in the show notes or put in the discount code Friendly Atheist, one word, all lowercase, you'll get 10% off any order. So thank you to Elle. And you should check out that book. It's really good.
Thank you.
I want to talk about the Georgia runoffs really briefly, only because, one, that happened, and that's a big deal, and it got overshadowed by everything in the news.
Right.
But I want to point out not just that it's a good thing for the country that Democrats will have control of the Senate. It means, I mean, if another Supreme Court, you know what? The first thing that came to my mind is Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court Justice, super conservative, could have retired over the past 2-3 years, and Trump could have replaced him with another version of himself, of Clarence Thomas, but like 50 years younger.
Right.
And Thomas, who's 72, did not retire. And now you can, I mean, I wouldn't put it past Mitch McConnell to do it before he is no longer the head of the Senate. But if Clarence Thomas retires or anything, like, he will not be replaced by a clone of his. That's because Georgia won this election and gave Democrats control of the Senate. Stephen Breyer, who's liberal, one of the 3 liberals on the bench, who's 82 and the second and the oldest person on the court, can retire and be replaced by somebody who's much younger and liberal. Like, man, I wish Ruth Bader Ginsburg could have held out for a few more months. But the fact is, like, the Supreme Court is, I wouldn't say saved because it's so bad to begin with right now, 6-3, but that is such a big deal. It also means after 6 years, I mean, I can't imagine how many people came to political consciousness over 6 years. Mitch McConnell has blocked everything in the Senate except for like the most important like COVID bill or like budget bills and judges. And you're actually going to see all those progressives, not just AOC, but like legislation that gets passed in the House that would pile up in the Senate and then stop there, will actually get moved on and voted on. And you'll actually get to see a working, functional government, because Republicans who, by the way, had total control of the government for 2 years, 2016 to 2018, and used it to do jack shit except for judges. Yep. Pretty much. Like, they don't want to govern. You actually have a governing party. And the other benefit of that is, so did Barack Obama for 2 years in 2008. And the big like complaint that I think is totally legitimate is, while he got the Affordable Care Act passed, he kind of had this philosophy like, I don't want to waste my political capital unless it's on this one big thing. Right. So let's set aside the other big things and focus on healthcare. That was kind of the governing philosophy there. And good, they got it done. And then Republicans used it against them and they took over. I think the people who are in office right now, many of whom were around a decade ago, they are well aware, like, you know what? Just do friggin' everything early. It doesn't mean we'll get all the progressive legislation passed. Like, I can't wait to complain about Democrats not doing enough. But like, you're gonna see movement, because I think there's enough people in there who are like, nope, don't hold back. Just let it all out. Let's run because we're good at this, and let's run on what we can pass. That's a good thing. All of that is only possible because those 2 Senate seats were won in Georgia. Like, I cannot stress how important that is. I wish I would see more people talking about it on TV. I know they can't, and I know why they can't this week, but it deserves, I hope someone somewhere gets a chance to reflect on what Democrats will be able to do once we can, for a second, get over all the stuff that's happening right now. If you care about church-state separation, to forget like liberalism or whatever. If you care about church-state separation, it's saved. The wall is protected, at least by a lot. Like, Republicans wanted to tear it down. Donald Trump tried to tear it down as much as he could through executive order. He said he did. He didn't actually do that. And the courts will certainly pose a problem, but it's being built back up. Like, that is a good thing. That is why so many atheists, by the way, overwhelmingly were working to get someone like Raphael Warnock elected. Because even though he's a minister, even though he's open, he talks about his faith nonstop. Guess what? He supports church-state separation. Right. Progressive religious people are not your political enemies if you are an atheist who cares about church-state separation and everything that stems from that. So,
yeah, Wednesday was the fucking wildest day, wasn't it? Like, I woke up to good news and then weird news and then terrible. I don't know. It was just such a day. Do you want to talk about Meghan McCain or this?
Go ahead and talk about Meghan McCain.
Okay. So I have a theory that I've been working on for like 10 years. This theory is that Republicans are physically and emotionally and intellectually unable to have any empathy, and they can only have sympathy for something that they have dealt with themselves. And I think this is born true again. Because, Hemant, when you're a scientist like me, you have your hypothesis and then you see if, that hypothesis is fulfilled. Yeah. Now, Meghan McCain, who is, I don't know if you've heard this, but she's John McCain's daughter. Have you heard about?
I have heard of him. I have heard of her. She's on The View. She's
on The View and is often, something of a punching bag, I would say, but that's fine. She just had a baby. Do you know what that baby's name is?
I do not.
Its name is Liberty. We're going to move on.
Oh my God.
No, we're not going to dwell. We're going to move on.
The baby white?
I mean, I honestly didn't check if this baby was not
Liberty white. McCain. Oh my, no, I don't know what his last name is. Baby's last name.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
Anyway.
So she was back at work at The View. She gave birth last fall. I don't have an exact date. She'd planned on coming back before the election, but she had unexpected medical complications that doubled her time out of office. So this is what she discovered as a result of a thing that she experienced that women deal with every day and have been telling us about for lifetimes. Quote, as I thought about it, the more angry I got that there weren't women in the rest of America that had the same kind of luxury I had, meaning to take extra time off. It takes personal experience sometime to get on board, you feckless cunt. That was me, not her. But now she's fully on board and decided that like her cause du jour is to make paid maternity leave the View's mission in 2021. She said that she wanted to, quote, put politicians' feet to the fire, especially members of McCain's own Republican Party who pay lip service to family values, to make paid maternity leave a legislated guarantee. Now,
so she's all for parent leave. Yeah. Because she just had a baby and she's like, like maternity leave, paternity leave are good ideas.
Because and beyond anything, beyond childcare, beyond anything else, physically going back to work right after you've given birth sucks. Again, can't be clear enough, haven't given birth.
I remember, I think I heard someone say like, okay, yeah, the Republican theory of they don't care about anything until it happens to them, and then suddenly they listen to what everyone else has been saying about it, or they start echoing what everyone else has been saying forever. Okay, well, Barack Obama was opposed to marriage equality until he's like, well, what did he say? Like, my daughters had friends at school whose parents were women. But here's the difference, I think. I could be wrong on this, but this is my theory on that. I think he was always supportive of like same-sex marriage, but he knew politically it was going to hurt him.
Yeah,
and I can debate the strategy there, but he like came up with an excuse later to justify the thing he always wanted to do. I don't know that Meghan McCain secretly wanted parental leave and supported the policy. No, she genuinely just figured out when it meant something to her that, hey, this thing Democrats keep talking about is actually a good idea.
Yeah, it's the Republican senator has a gay son and suddenly he's like pro queer rights. Like it's just.
By the way, her husband opposes it and uses his Federalist website to knock it down over and over. So maybe she should have a talk at home is all I'm saying about that.
And like that is genuinely, I think, the thing that absolutely utterly destroys me about the right wing is that they have like their view is that what I am going through is reality and what everybody else is going through is frivolous or stupid or overblown. So if I physically can't have a baby, then probably nobody else has a problem with that. And just going beyond things like that, just a really quick tangent that we don't, as a culture, talk so little about what pregnancy is like and what giving birth is like. Like women go into labor not knowing what to expect, and that's on us as a culture. When I have said in shows past, I miscarried in November, so I was pregnant for a few weeks. My vision got blurry. That was a fun thing because guess what? I'm a professional fucking writer and seeing the screen is really important to my ability to do my job. No, and then I looked it up and it was like, oh yeah, that's super common. Like, why don't we know these things? Like, why don't we talk about these things? And like, wouldn't that give some empathy for women who, because like I wasn't even like visibly, physically, uncomfortably pregnant. I just like, all of a sudden was like, is my prescription fucked? I can't see for some reason. And like, I didn't know that. And I'm a pretty well-educated and well-read person. It's just bananas how we keep pregnancy and maternity shit like so fucking secretive as if it's...
Again, this is not that anyone's asking me. If Democrats want to use their power for good, they should pass as much of that stuff as possible and then brag about it.
Yeah, forever.
Republicans sure as hell brag about not doing any of that stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
So they should pass all this legislation and then learn to be proud of it because they didn't do that with Obamacare. There was another story that happened earlier this week that we did not talk about, that no one talked about after it happened because of everything else. But a small thing happened last Sunday when they inaugurated, that's not the right word, when all the new Congress members took their oaths and got sworn in.
Sworn in, yeah.
Yeah, there is a daily congressional prayer. It shouldn't be there. They should get rid of it. It's ceremonial. It's pointless. Whatever. It's there. We can argue about whether it should be another time, but it's there. And on Sunday, it was delivered by Representative Emanuel Cleaver, who's a Democrat. And one of the things he said is that this year, we have a record number of women elected to Congress. I don't know what the number is, 40 or 50 or something. That's Democrats and Republicans. And he said he wanted to honor the fact that there was this record number of women. And so at the end of his generic prayer, he said, "Amen and a woman." Ha ha ha. It's a dad joke. Basically, is a little, by the way, he's a minister. He knows amen has nothing to do with men. He's just doing one of those punny little things that a million people have done before. That's it. It was, he said, I concluded with a lighthearted pun in recognition of the record number of women who will be representing blah, blah, blah. And by the way, also there's the first female chaplain of the House whose service began this week. Like totally harmless thing to do. Conservatives flipped their shit over the fact that he said a woman. Franklin Graham, evangelist Franklin Graham, I suppose he was trying to use this time of prayer to make a political statement about gender issues. Not a great start for 2021. Sean Hannity, it has become clear that wokeness has infiltrated our government. Tonight, we will call out the radical left. This is 3 days before the insurrection.
Right.
Donald Trump Jr., these people are freaking morons. Talking about the fact that a guy made a joke. Like, again, I don't like the prayer itself, but that part of it was not the problem. It was the existence of the prayer. I want to talk about one other totally unrelated thing. Otherwise, I will never get to talk about this. The New York Times this week this went totally undetected because of everything else. The New York Times has a series where they invite filmmakers to submit, like, not op-ed essays, which they always do, but documentaries, docs. So you can submit like a 10-minute film or whatever, and they edit it and they make it look nice. And I don't know what they do on their end of it, but I've seen a bunch of these over the years. They're always like really interesting to watch. And this week they published a 12-minute documentary called Ark of the Apocalypse. And basically it was created by a filmmaker named Jeremy Seifert, who I believe helped Bill Maher make Religulous way back when. But basically, it's just a 12-minute documentary about Ark Encounter and its existence, and kind of looking at the sort of people who believe it's real, like it represents something that really happened. He talked to a couple people in Williamstown, Kentucky, who are like, there was nothing here. Businesses were leaving, and then this Ark came into town, and they felt that was a big deal. He also, they also had people that said he had a member of like the local government saying, "Yeah, this is a boost to the economy," or at least some version. It was there to help us. But it was 12 minutes long. This is by no means a deep dive into the place. But the question is, look, the whole goal is, let me just show you the slice of America right here. And there's nothing wrong with that. There was nothing in the film that I saw where I was like, there's a real issue here. No, it's a pretty, this is what it is. That's what it is. That's why it's there. It does say in there, like, it's $100 million Ark when you consider how much money they got to go there and the tax breaks they got and all that.
Sure.
They show clips, like the B-roll footage is the zip line outside the outside the Ark, and an ice skating rink. Anything they can do to draw in families. Ken Ham wasn't even in the movie. It was
interesting.
Just like, look at the Ark. So that said, I watched it, and I'm not the only one to say this. One of Dan Phelps, who is a guy who has been a watchdog for Ark Encounter, he sent this message along to a lot of his followers too, saying like, this looks like an advertisement. And it's not. Ark Encounter had nothing to do with the footage, I don't believe. But I think I agree with that assessment, where it's like, you have a 12-minute thing about how cool this is, why the city said this is a good idea, why a businessman says, this revived our ghost town, and that's why we want it there. There's a lot of nice shots of the inside. A local pastor reading a Bible where it talks about Noah's Ark, and you come away with it and you realize they didn't talk about the businesses that have gone under because they invested money knowing the Ark was coming and then couldn't pay for it, like the hotels that had to go under or whatever. They didn't talk about the discrimination in hiring. They didn't talk about how it takes money away from like local schools or property owners. They didn't talk about the staff members who have left saying, the work situation there is not good. We are believers and the work situation is not good. They didn't criticize it at all. Granted, it wasn't meant to be critical.
Sure.
But if you're not critical of Ark Encounter when you are talking about it for 12 minutes, I guess the question I wanted to ask is like, is that an advertisement, a glorified advertisement? When, like, if you had to do a documentary of Fox News right now and you didn't point out or get talking heads from critics of it, you're just doing them a favor. And I went back to the debate between Ken Ham and Bill Nye, and one of the criticisms I certainly had, and a lot of other people had, is, Bill Nye, why the hell did you say yes to doing a debate with Ken Ham? Because it's not about who wins. Of course you're going to win, Bill Nye. You have science on your side. He has fairy tales. But the fact that you're doing it gives him a platform that he doesn't deserve. And he's going to milk the hell out of this. It's all he's got. And Bill Nye has moved on to do a million other things since that debate. It may have revived his career. Ken Ham still talks about the debate itself as if there was one. He's still selling the tape or whatever. Like, Ken Ham said, this thing, it's an advertisement for my brand of Christianity. Bill Nye can say whatever he wants about, like, that happened. I won the debate. Sure he did. It doesn't matter. it was an advertisement for the Ark. That was the criticism Bill Nye got when he said yes to it. I feel like this documentary on the New York Times thing, I know it's like a petty thing to like condemn, but it's like, come on, don't just air this uncritically. At least if you're going to make a documentary about the Ark, you even if it's 12 minutes long, you got to get feedback from people who have suffered because of it or who have called it out. There is a movie. Oh my God. What's the actual 2-hour documentary about the Ark? There Must Be Dinosaurs. Oh my God. Can you please look that up while I'm talking?
Yep.
But they made a 2-hour documentary about the Ark. We interviewed the filmmakers who made it. That one actually included like someone who makes the animatronics at the Ark.
We believe in dinosaurs.
We believe in dinosaurs. And it included Dan Phelps, who I just mentioned, who is critical of the Ark. And they actually did look at multiple sides. That is a better holistic view of the place. I didn't like that this documentary wasn't critical because they didn't air anything critical. And I think that's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think everything needs to be both sides to death because I do think that is something, but I would say not that.
I mean, when news footage, if they're like, I've heard this criticism too of Sunday morning talk shows, they will bring on Republicans to talk about like, let's hear from a Republican senator, Chuck Todd says on Meet the Press, who has a view on this thing. If all you're doing is inviting them on and not spending 20 minutes hammering them on their defense of Trump or everything awful, like if Nikki Haley gets a positive profile written about her, what the hell are you doing? Like, there is no both sides here. They are objectively bad for so many reasons. And to publish an uncritical take on it or to treat them as normal.
Right.
Like, oh my God, what the hell is wrong with someone who invests the time into this project and the money? Because it was a good quality film, like visually. But again, like, what the hell? What is wrong with you if you're in a position where you could actually say something and you take it to say, look, it's pretty. It's in Kentucky. What are you doing?
Yeah, I think that's a completely fair criticism.
I do have one other piece of good news that's also horrifying.
Okay, I have a piece of bad news. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first with this one. Pakistan. In a state in Pakistan, in Punjab, there's I would guess it's comparable to like a district court in the U.S. So the Lahore High Court, one judge or a panel of judges, this week, they banned virginity tests. And basically, here's what happens. If you are a woman who accuses someone of sexual assault or rape, one of the things that is allowed to happen is the other side can get someone, I don't know the details here, but basically they stick 2 fingers or something into a woman to basically judge her hymen. And they say like, well, it's loose or whatever, or it's broken or whatever. Therefore, we have evidence you've had sex before. Therefore, we shouldn't take your allegations seriously. Like, it's not scientific. There's no truth behind the veracity of that test. It's also punishing a victim a second time. Like, there's so much wrong with this. Remember, like, last year or 2 years ago, the rapper T.I. said, yeah, I take my daughter to the gynecologist and I make sure the gynecologist performs that test on her too. And everyone's like, what the hell are you doing? She's 18. Get away from her body, dude. And then later he's like, oh, I was joking, I think. But so they banned it in this part of the country. And what was really interesting about banning these virginity tests as being admissible in court is that there really wasn't the sort of pushback from religious politicians as you would think, which is like, that's good. That shouldn't happen at all. But also, like, everyone kind of expected conservative, mostly Islamic, like, government officials would be like, what? How dare you do this? No, they were mostly on board. Like, the activists won this battle, which is good. And it's also horrifying that we have to do this today still, but good for them. I mean, it's a step.
That's good. You're right. You hit it on the head. It's good news, but what? It's 2021. And that's what we just came to that conclusion. Okay.
Last story here. What do you got?
So John Mackey is the CEO of Whole Foods. which is, I don't know if there's any place that people haven't heard of Whole Foods, but it's like rich white people healthy food. Like everything's like
it's expensive, but it's all very, very good for you.
So good for you. They do have like a dope salad bar, but so John Mackey, along with our other overlords who are the CEOs of our giant companies, get a disproportionate amount of say in like how many, when a million zillion people work for you and you decide if they deserve healthcare, it puts you in a pretty powerful position. Anyway, so he was talking about healthcare and the importance of it and all that stuff. And he said, quote, I mean, honestly, we talk about healthcare. The best solution is to not need healthcare. The best solution is to change the way people eat, the way they live, the lifestyle, the diet. There's no reason why people shouldn't be healthy and have a longer lifespan. A bunch of drugs is not going to solve the problem. He says that 71% of Americans are overweight, 42.5% are obese. Clearly, we're making bad choices in the way we eat. It's not a sustainable path. And so I'm calling it out.
The kids at the cancer ward are going to love to hear that they just need more whole foods.
He said this begins...
So this is his argument again. I mean, it's one thing for the CEO of a health food, supposedly, company to say, you all just need to eat better. But is this some sort of argument against what? Affordable healthcare, boosting ACA?
Basically, well, this is the second time he's kind of hit the papers with something like this. In 2009, he wrote a Wall Street Journal, I guess, op-ed or something called The Whole Foods Alternative to Obamacare, in which he advocates for less government control of healthcare in the U.S. Quote, this begins with the realization that every American adult is responsible for his or her own health. We should take that responsibility very seriously and use our freedom to make wise lifestyle choices that will protect our health.
Yeah.
So
I think what bugs me about what the guy said is it means that no one in this guy's life circle he's probably floated this theory before, and no one around this guy has ever said, dude, you should maybe like not say that, or you don't have a full understanding of what's going on or what the argument actually is. And no one has ever said this to this guy because the way he talked about it was so overconfident. This is Hemet. For some reason, I'm going to blame Dottie. There was a little bit of an interruption and we lost Jess's microphone right after this moment. So I'm just going to cut in here to say thank you for listening. You can find Jessica Blueberry, BLUEBURIE on Twitter. You can go to her Etsy shop, Bitches Get Stitched Done. You can find me on Twitter at Hemant Mehta, and you can support the show at patreon.com/friendlyatheist podcast. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week.